Hey, we are live. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Just Two Dads. I'm your co-host, Brian Altounian.
And I am Shawn Francis.
Awesome. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about raising children with special needs and the impact that it has on marriage. So today on Just Two Dads. Ding. I love the intro now. It's awesome. Shawn.
Yes, sir.
This is it's an interesting topic for us to talk about as we are when we do just for folks who are watching or listening. First of all, thank you if you're tuning in. We're so appreciative to have you. Hey Joe, I love it when our regulars pop in and say hello. If you're catching us up on Facebook or on our YouTube channel, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and let us know if there's any topics you think that you'd like to have us cover. We're happy to have an open conversation about anything that would impact you and your family. We're also available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and Spotify, Pandora, anywhere where iHeartRadio, anywhere where you can hear podcasts. You can catch us at Just Two Dads, and also down in the U.S. Virgin Islands on WSTX AM radio. We're welcoming our families, our listening and viewing community. So thank you for joining us. Shawn and I have been doing this every week for it'll be almost a year. I think we're on episode number 43, maybe 44. Actually, I don't even know what episode we're at right now. And it's been an incredible journey. We've learned a lot along the way. Today's episode, I was starting to say in our normal career of sitting down with families and talking about finances and helping folks determine their path, their road to financial independence. We don't really like to do appointments where there's only one spouse, because in fact, we call those one-legged appointments, because oftentimes we'll have a conversation and the spouse says, yeah, I got this. And then they go away and they have a conversation with their spouse and they come back and go, yeah, everything that we talked about, yeah, we need to change that all around. And yet today we're going to talk about marriage, and we're kind of like two one-legged conversations here, because it's just us. It's not our wives. But that's what this is all about, right? Just two dads, and how men come to this conversation around those issues that surround families dealing with special needs family members. And we're very real and straight and authentic. And I think that we're not afraid to be vulnerable and have discussions like this. And I think it's important to continue the broader conversation, because not only does do the things that we talk about impact the families who are dealing with special needs family members, but we find that these conversations transcend and impact families who are dealing with a variety of situations and circumstances in their family, no matter what they're dealing with. So today's another one of these conversations, and Shawn and I come to this conversation with completely different perspectives and experiences, which I think we all do. And I think that this is going to be an interesting conversation. So how does raising a child with special needs have an impact on your marriage and your relationships? So Shawn, do you want to, I'm going to say hello to you, welcome you today. You've been dealing with some stuff in your family and some stuff personally. And so you're in a particularly vulnerable state right now. So this is good conversation for us to have. So I'm going to welcome you to the show and then let you jump in and start this conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that we're guided by what's best, so to speak. Here's what I mean by that. Brian mentioned there's some challenges I've been going through personally, like anybody and any other family out there with COVID, adjusting to what life means after it. And we often say that there is no such thing as special needs. Everyone has the same need. Everyone has a need to be heard, a need to be seen, a need to be counted, a need to be recognized and loved. It's just that when there's a diagnosis of a disability of some kind, intellectual or the cause of a catastrophic accident, whatever the case might be, those needs then multiply for the person with the diagnosis and for the person who's caring for that individual with the diagnosis. So then when you think about a marriage, your bond is tested 10 times more so when there is a diagnosis that comes into play. And the thing that I find so fascinating about this format and the things that we talk about is that each topic is an onion that has so many, an immeasurable amount of layers to it. For instance, today we're going to talk about how, for each of us, raising a child with special needs has affected our individual marriages. But that same topic can be said for the perspective of someone else, being a female. So each perspective is different. So we're not here to talk about statistics on a whole, although we know that the statistics are very high for marriages that don't survive when there is a child that is diagnosed with special needs. And so, as we talk about those things, all we can speak to is our own experience. So,
yeah. And I think, I mean, the thing about these conversations is that we've never hidden. I think we're pretty transparent. We don't shy away from those things that are very personal. Again, I think it speaks to our commitment to furthering this conversation and making a difference in people's lives. So just to be very straight, I have been married and divorced now twice. My oldest daughter, Jo, who is our guest last week, as a matter of fact, had some special needs issues and learning disabilities growing up, and it had it's interesting because it did put pressure on my first marriage, but it did bring up situations that come up in marriage, right? How you communicate with your spouse, how you handle adversity, how you handle a variety of things that come at you. And I think if you don't have alignment, it doesn't really matter what the external source is, it's going to put pressure on your relationship. And so,
right.
My first marriage, Jordan has a younger sister, so who's neurotypical. So we had 2 children in our first marriage, and then I remarried. And so then it was a whole different set of circumstances because now Jordan had a stepmother, and then a stepmother stepping into, that conversation where both of Jordan's parents, her mother and I, had to be very, very focused on what we were doing to support Jordan's efforts and, help making sure that Jordan was successful in everything that she did. And so now there were 3 parents involved, and that added a whole nother layer of of relationships, issues that come up. And again, it's not anything new. It's just that the special needs component just put like a microscope on those issues, right? And so I'm not a perfect person, and I'm probably can. I think all of us, right? We can list the long list of negative things that we say about ourselves, and there's probably a shorter list of the positive things we say about ourselves because we have such an odd, self-perception. But I will say this: every experience has definitely been a learning experience for me as an individual, as a man, as a husband, as a boyfriend, as a father, as a son, as a brother. And, I'm learning along the way, and I don't think I'm ever going to stop learning until the day that I take my last breath. So that's my situation. We'll get into more detail of that later. But Shawn, your situation is completely different and has a whole other set of circumstances that have, I'm sure that have put a microscope on your relationship with your wife, Laura.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And so the way it started is, as a matter of fact, this week, technically tomorrow, is our 16th wedding anniversary. So I am so beyond thankful for that. So I want to say
that's awesome.
Happy anniversary to my lovely wife. And
happy Mother's Day this week,
yeah,
right? We're celebrating we're Mother's Day month, right? The month of May.
Right.
We're celebrating Mother's Day month. So
absolutely
fantastic.
And for us, we are the epitome of blended. So in the first week of May, we have my mom's birthday, which was yesterday. We have the oldest of the boys' birthday, which is this week. We have Elijah's birthday, which is this week. And then we have our anniversary as well. So much so that Laura's often said, you know what, we need to renew our vows and move our anniversary to September, which is our birthdays, because we share the same birthday month. But here's what we knew we were getting into. When we first started dating to begin with, we really took our time before I met her daughters from her original, from her previous marriage. Just because, and it's funny how things work out. When my parents split up, it had a profound effect on me. And from what I understood later on is that when when children grow up seeing parents at odds, so to speak, when they part, supposedly it's less traumatic. Because I guess, and I'm thinking, I guess it's because you can see it coming. If you don't see parents at odds fighting or anything like that, and then the split comes, it's a little more like having the rug pulled from underneath your feet. At least I knew that's the way it was with me, and that's a whole another story as to how that went. But when my mom in particular remarried, you know, my stepdad could have been a guy on a on a white horse in a suit of shining armor, and that wouldn't have worked at all. I just I wouldn't have. There's no way that I would have been able to um, accept it. Sorry,
It's your wife calling.
yeah,
Shawn, answer the phone.
yeah. There's no way that I would have accepted him. I just wouldn't have. But
how old were you at the time?
Well, they dated for a while before they actually got married. But when he came into our lives, I was 17.
Oh, okay.
So I wasn't done dealing with the divorce, and I didn't know that I wasn't done dealing with it. So it's, and at that age, I really didn't have a whole lot of consciousness to be able to step outside of myself and see kind of what was taking place. But the benefit that I did have is that, he and I didn't necessarily get along that much, at first, but I didn't question his intention, anything like that. And I never witnessed him speaking ill of my dad. I never witnessed my mom speaking ill of my dad. So there's been a great coexistence. So by the time my wife and I met, I knew that I had the benefit of not seeing a bunch of guys come and go or anything like that. I had some what was like reintroduction to stability, because the family that I inherited as a result of my stepdad's family were people that really might as well have, we might as well share blood. I was just that blessed. So I went from one stable situation that became unstable to another stable situation, even though it took time to realize that that's what I had before me. And so I'm saying all that to say that I knew that there was something to be said for, even though I didn't have any plan to go anywhere, we should know that we were pretty solid and going to last before meeting them, because I didn't want to meet my wife's daughters, get to know them, and then not have the relationship work out. And, I'm kind of patting myself in the back as I say that, or patting both of us on the back, because, I felt pretty sure I was like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm like neck deep in love. This is it. But at the same time, still wanted to make sure. So we did that. And then as we met, as I met them, there's one dynamic that took place, which is, their relationship with their dad and his acceptance and that kind of thing. And that was not necessarily the smoothest, but, then I knew that, I wanted to spend the rest of my life with Laura. When we got married, I had vows that I wrote to her, but I had vows that I wrote to the girls as well. So I presented.
How old were the girls at the time?
When we got married, they were 6 and 8. So when we got married, they were, I think it was 4 years after that, about that. So,
okay.
Right around
Just
there.
give people an understanding of,
yeah,
where things were.
And so I wrote vows to the 3 of them, obviously each of a different nature, and then gave a necklace to each of them in addition to the ring to Laura, because, I knew what that meant and everything. And it was the epitome of a plan. We knew we wanted kids, of our own biologically together. And so Elijah was born. We went through, what was the term I'm looking for? Genetic testing and all that kind of stuff, because neither one of us was, in our 20s, even though I'm, older than Laura by about 6 years. So anyway, we did that. Elijah got, was born and everything. And it was, seemed fairly normal. But there were things that she was noticing that he wasn't necessarily doing in terms of eye contact and that sort of thing. And I don't think we sat up and said, okay, here's where we're going to, you're good at this, you do that. I'm good at this. Yeah, I'm going to take care of that. We didn't do that. We just kind of fell right into our roles, and hers, which is why she's, just so, I don't know, immeasurable in value and in my love for her, is that she's a researcher. She's gonna do detective work and figure out what it takes to make something work, put it all together, and that's exactly what she did. And so we went to the doctor, got into the early intervention and everything, and I don't think I really knew how we were affected by any of that as far as our relationship goes, um, until maybe just a little further on. So for me, I and this is my own personal transparency here. I'm a person who, in school, especially before high school, was always physically in class, but mentally not there. So grades and I have never been good friends, and I'd be like this puzzle to people because they'd have a conversation with me and think that I was fairly bright, but it wouldn't necessarily reflect in grades. And so that continued to affect my confidence in certain areas, going forth. And I think that that affected how, out in front I might be, in terms of, solutions and things like that. So what was taking place is, like, she'd come up with an idea and plan, bring it to me. We'd kind of go through it together, and we would act on it pretty much, together. But as we're doing that and finding our way, the other thing that happened is that we ended up taking in my sister-in-law's.
Yeah. So before you go there, just wanted to, again, let's just sort of set so that people understand. So how old were you when you had Elijah? How old were you?
I was, oh my gosh. So what was, like, 42?
Okay. So you're in your 40s and Laura's in her late 30s. And by the time you had Elijah, how old were the girls now?
They were at that point, gosh, like, it was just before high school. So what is that?
Like 14, 15?
14, 15, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And so Laura had had the benefit, as you were dealing with Elijah's diagnosis, that Laura had 2 children already. And, as a mom, first of all, moms just have this sort of keen sense anyways, but
had girls who mature faster than boys too.
And had girls, right? So much, right. So, but she had children. So, she knows what signs to look for, right?
Right.
Jordan was our first child, and we didn't know what signs to look for. We didn't know what we were dealing with. We had no idea because we had nothing to compare it to. So at least you had that. And now the girls, so now Elijah's born, he's had his diagnosis. The girls are almost high school, and you're now in your early 40s, right?
Yeah.
And then you take on something else.
Yes, and it's funny because of the story, which is not mine to tell, and the circumstances, it wasn't too surprising that we might end up taking them on one day.
Right. And I think we're just really sort of painting the picture of what, again, as a spouse, and, in the marriage relationship, right, the things that we sort of surround ourselves with, just for people to get a picture of what you're going to describe right now, is, again, another layer of stuff that's added to the house environment. All right. So, with the circumstance, not that the circumstances aren't important, but not for this conversation. Right. But what you did is the important thing, I think, right?
Yes. And so we because of the circumstances, we weren't surprised that, that happened, but we weren't prepared for it to happen when it did, as quickly as it did. As a matter of fact, we were on what was like a family honeymoon, if you will. We went down to the Virgin Islands to see family that didn't, especially for those that had not come out to California for the wedding, when we knew that this was going to take place. So it did. And so we took them in, we became.
So wait. But you haven't said what it is. You didn't say what it is. What is this?
I did earlier. I said that. I said we ended up taking in my sister-in-law's 4 kids. Yes.
Okay, good. So I just wanted to put a little underline on that. Right?
Yeah. 2 boys and 2 girls. And
Laura's sister's children.
Right. And so we begin going through the process of, what does it take to become a legal guardian? What is the benefit of being a legal guardian versus an adoptive parent? And what are the pros and cons of each? And there's a lot to take in and understand. And so that's exactly what we did. And I say we with a little, tinge of discomfort, only because when it comes to the legwork and what it takes to find out what the benefit is between the two, dealing with social workers and all that kind of stuff, that was what she did. And we then came together because I, as a result of the choice to build a financial services business as an independent contractor, had more freedom in terms of my schedule than she did. So I would take Elijah to his therapy. I was the only dad in a mommy and me class. And when I say his therapy, we're talking about 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and then on a Saturday as well. And in some cases twice a day. And so we were, dealing with, all of those things. And then when we took the kids in, the thing that was at first a challenge also became a gift, because I don't remember where he was verbally, and that kind of thing. But one of the first things he was verbally able to really express was that he didn't want to share his mom. And so, he was just like he would say no, and my mommy, and that kind of thing. And I think he'd be verbal anyway, but he wouldn't be as verbal as he is had that not come about. So now fast forward, it has been I think about 11 years. We have completed the adoption process about 2 years ago. And the way that, we've been tested it's just different from what most people would get. But I have a clear understanding as to, as a result of any fray or crack in the armor of our union, I have an understanding as to how other situations and other unions don't survive based on the foundation. And the one thing you mentioned in the very beginning, we were talking about, how you communicate. All of that has everything to do with how you respond to a challenge individually, how you respond to a challenge as a unit. And if the differences are too great and you can't come together for the good while acknowledging what those differences are and allowing the differences to then become strengths even, then it's really difficult. And, I'm just going to sound like the guy who just loves his wife. And it's because that's who I am, because I think it takes something to deal with somebody finding themselves as well. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I can be rough on myself, but I'm always looking to get better. And of late, especially, my thought is, what's the best way for me to honor her and make things easier for her, and I think that's one of the things that it takes from a male perspective too, especially if a woman takes on the role that one stereotypically does in terms of being nurturing and stepping out and is selfless for the sake of everybody else. And that's exactly who she is in more ways than none.
Well, it's interesting because I think that, when it comes to the subject of marriage, everybody enters marriage, from a different perspective. And I think that if you get married young, so my first marriage, I guess I was 30. No, I was 29. I was 29, which is still young, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And our parents' age, that was old, right? But for our age, our generation, 29 is still fairly young. And I think that the person that you marry and, the person that you are when you get married is not often the same person, 20, 30, 40 years down the road. I mean, hopefully we're on a path of evolution, both individually and collectively. And I think that for me, I was a younger 29 anyways. There were certain things that I did in my youth and growing up that had me. I ran my dad's grocery store at 16 years old. So I had a ton of responsibility young. So there's certain elements of my life that I was much more adult than my age. But at the same time, there were certain things from an emotional perspective. I was very sheltered. I mean, not that sheltered, but really, my family really kind of managed my entire life, my social life and my, our vacations were all together. And so we had a very tight unit. Now, by the way, my mom and dad were both married twice as well. So my mother and Altounian, my stepfather, that's the result of their second marriages to one another. And my my father Altounian wanted to make sure that our family unit was the tight unit. In fact, I never even saw my biological father until I was about to get married, by design, not my design, but by the design of my parents. Right. So,
Mm-hmm.
so what that did is it sort of established an interesting maturing awakening for me. And I'll get into this. I want to go back to your story with Laura, because I mean, your story with Laura is it's so beautiful. First of all, I joke with you that I don't really believe that she exists, because she's perfect in every description that you have of her. Not only that, but we never get a chance to see her. I'm hoping that we're going to actually get her on this podcast one of these days. I've only been begging for a year, but that's okay. I believe that she exists. But let me just say this. When my mom and my biological father got divorced, I was young. I was 2. My older brother was 4. We were very, very young. I didn't really know my biological father. There was an agreement that he would not be part of our lives growing up. And I was, raised Altounian. I'm as Jewish looking as, the no Armenians look as Jewish as I do. But anyways, so Altounian raised me. I worked in his store. I was part of the conversation. His family was my family. The Armenian family was my family. Didn't really know my biological father. And then when I saw, just before I asked my wife to marry me, I saw a picture of my mom and dad on their wedding day, and it was the first time I'd ever seen a picture of him. I was 20. I was like 27, 28 at the time. Yeah, I'd never seen him. Never seen a picture of him.
Let me ask you this, because most people, male or female, would have a longing and questions and that kind of thing. And you were never, it sounds like you weren't told a story. You weren't told something that was not true. You knew he was around, but you weren't able to see him. Did you have like a deep yearning to, who was he and that kind of thing?
It's a good question. When I was at school at UCLA, my older brother went and found him, and he had a deep yearning. He was older. He was a little bit more aware during the divorce. So had a deep yearning, wanted to find him, found him, came to me and asked me if I wanted to engage. At the time I was in school. I had a bunch of stuff that was kind of going on. I really didn't, I thought initially, like a punk teenager, I'm like, screw it. He didn't want to see me in my life up to now. Why would I want to see him? That was kind of my defiant, right?
That was my next question too, because I was thinking, even though there's an agreement, he still has a choice. How bad would it be if he said, you know what, skip that. I'm going to step forth and I want to see my son, but you never know. I've never been in that situation.
And that didn't happen, right?
Right.
From my understanding. So here's the crazy thing, right? So this is what sort of set the stage for my first marriage. So I know I'm going to ask Risa to marry me. And I find this picture of my mother and father on their wedding day. He is the same age as I am, as I'm looking at the picture. And Shawn, it was as if I was looking in a mirror.
Wow.
We looked exactly alike. And I was like, and my cousin who showed me the picture is like, you've never seen a picture of your father before? I'm like, no, I never have. And then it became a yearning for me. Then it became something I had to see. I had to figure out. I had to find out. I live in Southern California, in the Los Angeles area. As it turns out, he lived in Ventura. I asked my brother about him. It turns out that my brother had a 6-month relationship with my father and his family. I thought it was a weekend, and my folks were upset that he went to go find him, that my brother went to find my biological father, and they didn't talk to him for 6 months. And so I thought, well, man, if I go do that, they're going to do the same thing to me. I don't think I'm ready. But the more that I thought about it, the more I thought, why? Like, why was this kept from me? And why would my brother have a 6-month relationship and not tell me? Why? As it turns out, my biological cousin worked for my mom's company. I had a crush on her. We're a week apart in age. I had this major crush on this gal who turns out to be my biological cousin. And so I was like, man, a lot of effort went into keeping this secret from me.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
And that has to impact the manner in which you parent, period, but then the manner in which you respond to a special needs diagnosis for your child too.
100%. Well, this is going to be the amazing thing when I tell you this, is that he remarried. He had 2 children. His youngest child, has the same issues that my daughter Jordan has. They have the same learning disabilities. They have some of the same challenges. Also, by the way, successful. She got married. She's had 2 children of her own. She has a job. She lives on the East Coast. She's amazing, Marnie. She's absolutely amazing, but struggled the same way that Jordan did. So now as I found this out right now, I realize that there's a genetic component, possibly connection here.
Right.
And I realized how much trouble my folks went to separate, and I felt very betrayed, and I felt I felt that there were agreements that were made and decisions that were made for me as a child. Decisions were made by these adults that I didn't understand. I couldn't understand. And if I was going to enter into marriage, like I really wanted to understand that, right? So I don't mean to make this a long story, but I'll shorten it up. So I did find him on my own. We looked exactly alike. He got to tell me his side of the story. I got to meet his family, and I didn't tell my folks for a couple of years because I didn't want them to take it out on me. I wanted it to be an experience that I could appreciate. And Risa, my first wife, went with me, and we together were, we were kind of living in two relationships, right? And not telling my mother and Altounian, my stepfather, that I was having, because I didn't want to make it about them. This wasn't about them. It was about me. And Risa and I were very aligned in that. But it also gave Risa an opportunity to point out all of the frailties of my parents, right? All the limitations and all the issues that come up. And I got to really sort of explore what a marriage, and a remarriage looked like, and how to do it the right way, and how to do it what I thought was, the wrong way. I eventually did tell my folks. They did do exactly what I thought they would do. They didn't talk to me for 6 months. They couldn't understand it. Our relationship has never, ever been the same since that time. Yeah. That was now 20 years ago. And so never had the same relationship with them because they felt betrayed that I went to go find my biological father. I felt my life was enhanced. Right. So now fast forward, Risa and I get married, have a child. My mother says, by the way, I don't think Jordan is talking. I don't think she's babbling properly, and, honoring my mom. And we got our diagnosis as well. Jordan, suffered with apraxia and other learning disabilities. And so now I've got sort of an estranged relationship with my parents. I have sort of a relationship with my biological family, but it's not really my family, right? Because I haven't known them for 29 years. Now I've got a child that has a special needs issue. And just after Jordan's diagnosis, my father-in-law was diagnosed with what's the debilitating disease?
Lou Gehrig's?
Lou Gehrig's disease. Thank you. I was just thinking, the baseball player, Lou Gehrig, of course, the baseball player.
Yeah.
And so then he deteriorated over the time that we were trying to figure out Jordan's diagnosis and how to deal with that. Jordan and the sort of the pressure of the family dynamic and my father-in-law's illness, it kind of rocked our foundation a bit. My ex-wife was an attorney, very used to being in adversarial situations, and because as attorneys tend to be that way. And it was great when it was adversarial for other people as we were aligned together. But then when it kind of turned towards me, it wasn't so much fun. And it was a struggle. And we had Gabby, we had another child, and Gabby's, amazing and beautiful, incredible. But it was tough because we entered this again as young adults whose lives were in in kind of a sort of a new spinning pattern. And I went in and spent a lot of time in personal development. And I got on a path that helped me start to see how I can be a better person. And I started to evolve, and I wanted Rita to come along with me. And she did for a period of time. And then she was like, I don't like this change. Like, I'm not that person. I'm this person. I'm who I am. I'm not going to change. This is the way I am. And then I thought, is this how I want to live the rest of my life? Right.
That's the big stake right there. Yeah. That's the big.
That was it. And it's still like we went counseling. We had very, very specific conversations about what do we want to have in our lives going forward. And I wanted, tools, ways to come together and be on the same page. And at the time she had just dug in and was like, this is it. Father passed away. Her mother passed away very shortly thereafter. Her brother has passed away at a young age. So there's sadness in the relationships in her family. And it wasn't a place that I felt I could be empowered and be evolved and get to the next level. And so I had a young child with special needs. I had a young, 1-year-old as well. Like, to leave that situation was such a difficult decision to make. And I sought out counsel from a lot of folks. And to your point, the thing that you said earlier, right? Sometimes at 17 years old, you're like, oh man, the family's been fighting, man. We've been waiting for you guys to split up. Thank God you're finally going to split up and live your own lives, right? Or do you do it when they're young and they don't really know anything different than living in two houses? And ultimately that was the decision that I made. I made the decision to leave, but do the exact opposite of what my parents did and be incredibly involved, very, very much a co-parent for Jordan and Gabby and their needs. And Risa and I have settled into a co-parenting relationship for the last 20 years. And, it's not been easy. And I'm sure it's contributed to some of Jordan's challenges and struggles as a young, now married adult as well, in addition to the special needs issues that she has. But our marriage could not survive. And it was not the special needs issue itself. It was just part of the conversation around adversity in your life. Yeah. And realizing that we were not in the same space to want to grow, evolve individually and or separately. I wanted to evolve, and I was alone in that decision. And by the way, here's the thing I'll tell you. She's incredibly evolved now. She's retired. She lives a great life. She is, she has the life that she's always wanted. And, God bless her. And I love her for who she is for my daughters. But it wasn't where I wanted to spend the rest of my life. And again, I didn't mean to take over the conversation. I'll finish by saying, when I got married for the second time, I was totally in love with Laura and acknowledged the challenges and we have a child together, Blake, who's now almost 14, and the challenges that she had jumping into that dynamic. Still a bizarre relationship with my parents and my family, still dealing with Jordan and special needs issues and the challenges that come with teenagers trying to, survive in a normal school setting. And then on top of that, having an ex-spouse in the mix who was going to be part of the conversation because we're co-parenting our girls together. That added a whole other set of strains and stresses to my second marriage. And so, that didn't survive, and that was not my choice, but that didn't survive for a whole bunch of reasons. And again, as we talked about this, special needs children are not the cause of divorce, although, and we said we weren't really going to talk about statistics, but I think the number is it's over 80% of divorces occur in families where their children have special needs issues. And I say it's not the special needs issue that causes the divorce. I think it's the challenges that come with focused parenting and the decisions that you have to make, as you parent a special needs child, that bring up the other things. And if you don't have alignment, it's an amazing challenge. The thing I love about your stories about you and Laura and how you deal with Elijah. First of all, I want you to talk about this. You guys have very specific roles that you play in all of this, but you guys, I mean, again, I'm only taking a one-sided. I don't even know if she's even around or live, or she's really a real person. But so I'm just going to say, from what I've heard from you, you guys have tremendous alignment. Even when there's stuff that you don't agree about, you guys just have tremendous alignment in your foundation. And I think that that's such a critical thing to have as you evolve, because I consider you to be an incredibly evolved man. And, and I think that, what you bring to the table is so amazing. And so the fact that you guys have alignment on so many issues is really amazing. Yeah. Okay. Robert says she exists. So if Robert says she exists, I'm going to go with that, because Robert is not somebody who's going to mess around here. So, one of these days we'll get to see her, but I'll stop talking so you can talk about Laura and your relationship.
It's never easy. And I would be a person who, let me back up a bit. When we decided what the topic was going to be today, I thought about people generally speaking, and I thought about Jordan in particular. I said, I don't want anybody to see this and think, oh, so I am the reason why they split up. And so to the point of what you were saying earlier, is that a diagnosis of special needs is only, in my opinion, I've always said, if your foundation is not strong, it's going to be it's not going to survive the test of a special needs diagnosis, depending upon the severity of the diagnosis and how dependent the child is upon the support of parents to become independent, right? And so based on that, the diagnosis, how one responds to it is simply an accelerant of that which is already there, which is that it gets a little rocky or it's going to fall apart altogether. One of the two. It is not the fault of anybody that has a diagnosis. And for the most part, when we get married, the younger you are, the less you know who you're really marrying, because you don't really know who the heck you are.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and when you do that, you find out. So the one thing is, when you decide to ask someone to marry you, make sure that it's somebody that you feel good about being with while you find out who the heck you really truly are, because that's something you probably spend your whole life finding out. Other than that, you wake up one day and it's just like, wait a minute, I don't know who I'm with. So, the other thing is that, I would be someone who seeks personal development anyway. I was long before I got into financial services. Our business is one of people and developing people and uplifting them, and financial services just happens to be the vehicle by which that's done. So as a result, that has made me focus even more so on personal development. And I was that way before, but Lord takes that to another level, or causes me to, because not just because I want to be the best person, the best husband, and the best father I can be, but I become concerned about my growth and our growth, because there's growth which is in fact my own. It's mine to initiate, it's mine to execute, and it's mine to make happen so I can better the lives of those around me, starting with myself. But there is a certain amount of growth that has to take place together, because if you don't grow together, you will grow apart.
Agreed. 100%.
Yeah. So that's 100%. The one thing that we, and there were times where I felt like maybe scared about that or something. And just like, I don't want to I don't want that to happen. So we have conversations about those things a lot. And that in itself is work in progress too. And, she'll tell you, I naturally, I'm a bit of a romantic, not as much as I used to be. And so much so I would think that, if I wrote a nice letter or a poem or something like that, I would be like, I have to do that as the muse inspires me. I have to do that as it comes to me. And I heard that marriage was work. I'm like, yeah, if you put too much work into it, then it's forced, what you say or what you do. And the question that you always hear me ask guests, which is, tell me a belief that you held dear that now no longer do. Well, for me, the belief that I held dear was that it's got to be spontaneous, the flow, whether it's your intimate moments, it's the poetry you write, the flowers you send or whatever. There's some truth to that, but the bottom line is you better work, because if you don't decide that, hey, here's the time that I'm going to do such and such, then before you know it, such and such never gets done. And for me, that's a continuous work in progress, because it's very, very easy. It's actually easier, I think, to take someone for granted, especially if they are reliable, lovable, nurturing, and put others first. It's easy to take somebody like that for granted, with it being no intention of yours whatsoever. And I'd be lying if I said that doesn't take place at times. And so I try to watch it and just, how can I take burden off of her shoulders? And I'm never satisfied with my attempt to do that. And I don't know if I ever will be.
Yeah, I think that, I love that you acknowledge it. I think that for men, and here's my 2 cents. I think that we have to take in this is going to sound crazy, the gestalt of our partners, like the whole picture, and acknowledge those things that make them tick, and the things that make them successful, and the things that give them challenge. Because we are a product of the environment that we grew up in, and each one of us has made a certain decision about ourselves unconsciously. A lot of people live with that, I'm not good enough statement, right? That's just one of those that's like common to human nature to some degree, right? When you're just like, I'm not good enough for whatever reason, right? Or whatever it is, or I'm shy, I'm too this, I'm not enough that, I'm whatever, right? We make some decision at 3 and 4 years old when we can't even really articulate it, but we make that decision unconsciously, and then we live our lives through that filter. And when we go into a relationship, if our partner's not servicing the things that help us overcome those, that's a challenge, And so, again, both of my ex-wives came with a bunch of baggage. In some cases, I thought that I was servicing, them properly and in a way that was supportive of them. And there's some things which I'm sure, and this is not going to be a very common thing too, I reminded each of them of their fathers, right? And had to try to undo that internal discussion that they have about, their relationship with their fathers. And I think a lot of us that enter relationships, we have to overcome those challenges. Listen, for me, now that I've kind of given you a little bit of background, like clearly my biological father left when I was 2 years old, and then I never saw him for 26, 27 years. I don't care what anybody says. I'm evolved. I made that so much about me. My older brother made it so much about him, his memory, right? You have to, especially because he doesn't come back, doesn't check in, doesn't inquire, doesn't really like. I will tell you that once I started getting into the inquiry stage, like, oh, I wonder where. I will tell you there are times I thought, if I was at a Dodger game, what if he was in the next section, right? Driving in traffic on the freeway, knowing that he lived in, the next county up, right? Mm-hmm. How many times was I on the same freeway? Were we going the same direction? Once I saw a picture of him, I once saw a guy at a local neighborhood, a gathering, and the guy looked like the picture in the thing. And I literally walked up to him and asked him if he was my father, because like I was seeing the face everywhere, right? And so there's definitely a not wanted, fear of abandonment, a lot of those things that come up that we make up for ourselves. And listen, guys, I was a psych major at school, so that's not by accident either. I say it was my favorite subject, but I'm sure that a lot of it had to do with me wanting to solve some of these issues that I didn't even know I had.
Sure.
And so when it came time to, feel abandoned, emotionally or alone, or those moments that have continued to plague me, my adult life. That's where it comes from. And so I think if our partners acknowledge that, and we as men acknowledge that our spouses and our partners have their own challenges, and we can honor that space and provide safety and support or whatever's needed, in that, we're going to have a better chance of being aligned and moving things forward. It doesn't matter what the challenges are. And I think your point is so important, Shawn. A special needs diagnosis isn't the thing that drives people apart. The fact that it just happens to add a layer of, an extra level of, a commitment, decision-making, another layer of what we tell ourselves, challenge, all those other things that cause a problem, which would cause a problem in a relationship, even without a special needs child. It just puts a microscope on, on the issues. So I think your point is right. Like those of us who are, and by the way, we know a lot of adults and parents of special needs children who have divorced, and they take on the extra burden of now being a divorced single parent of a child with special needs, and the whole stigma around that. And so hopefully, there are support groups. We've highlighted a few of them here in other places where folks can get the support to know that they're not alone, to know that there are people that have gone through that same situation. And, we just engage in the conversation. It just helps to further the cause along. Man, I dominated the conversation today. I'm so sorry. This was your topic, and I've sort of taken over.
I don't even know if I felt like you dominated it. No, I feel we're just having a chat. But to our viewers too, again, neither one of us is an expert on this. We're just what we're doing, quite frankly, is revealing ourselves here, and we're going to have the subject touch upon again in the future with people that are professionals. So just like we don't want to have a professional come on and just tell you, here's what you should expect, here's what it means statistically, here's what people do, it also helps, at least we hope, to hear some perspective from individuals who might cause you to say, oh, somebody else is in that situation, somebody else feels as I do. And it's funny when you talk about the you reiterated that, which I've always said, which is that I think more people, obviously, I've always thought more people than we know have the whole "Am I good enough?" question. But the truth of the matter is, I think everybody actually has that. The only thing that differs is how much and to what extent a person does. And it doesn't, and it's not determined by where they are in life, because some people, as a result of it, find themselves very driven and become very successful from a purpose and material standpoint, but the gap is still not necessarily filled, or the void. And then when the special needs component comes into play, that takes place as well, which is why, again, as I said earlier, the foundation needs to be strong. Everybody has some level of it, because I think the only way to not have that in life is to have every single person that you ever encountered uplift you, and nobody has that, Yeah. So and it might not be, there may be some cases where it's not even necessarily damaging, but everybody has a moment of some, at some point where in some way, shape, or form they question whether or not they're good enough, maybe for that given moment, and at least subconsciously, because I don't, not everybody has that thought consciously.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that if we are constantly, if we're conscious of it, and we're consciously seeking evolution, and we're seeking to be inspired, and to be motivated, and to be heard, seen, gotten, and that we try to find a higher purpose for ourselves. I think that that it involves us being exposed and vulnerable first, and then we kind of have to be broken apart to be kind of put back together in a new in a new form, a new format. I love some of the comments that people are making. I'm going to share this one here. Robert we talk about this a lot, and I'm just going to say this out loud for folks who are listening. If we both understand that men and women have different makeups, men are analytical, women are emotional. I mean, again, stereotypically, but yes, that's more or less, it's the whole conversation of men are from Mars and women are from Venus, right? And it does require a conversation between both, right? Because we both come to our relationships with our own experience and our own expertise and our own our own baggage and our own circumstances. And I think, again, one of the things that agreement and alignment is so critical. Finding agreement and alignment in your relationship, because you're going to evolve each individually as it stands, and you want your partner to evolve and grow and be a better version of them, and you hope that they want the same for you. And in doing that, it's possible to be aligned and growing in the same direction, but sometimes it does create an alignment where you're separating, right? You're going different directions. And that's okay if there's open communication, open dialogue about how you encounter these, these kinds of challenges, and some survive and some don't. And, again, I think these conversations that you and I have, you're right. This is just two dads having a conversation and sharing a common experience and sharing common goals. And we just happen to be doing it in front of a bunch of people that we love, and hopefully it gets some value out of the conversation that we begin, and hopefully it starts ongoing conversations. I know that, as the work that we are doing, not only in our financial services business, but in this community and with this, with this audience and with the people that we interact with, our hope is that we build a web, a village of support for folks to be able to have resources and places to go, to get help, to not feel alone, and to find a purpose for themselves to take their situation and possibly have it impact others. I'm inspired on a daily basis from those people who have taken their circumstance and made a difference in other people's lives. So we talk about Susanna all the time, Susanna Peace Lavelle, who has done that, and Jessica Pate, and so many people on our show that are supporting other folks. Susan Fink, I could go on, the Gotts, Sam Ebry, Brett Lieberman, like all the folks we've had on the show and had this conversation have taken circumstances that they've encountered and turned it into something that has an impact on the rest of the world. And that's, at the end of the day, I think, what we're all trying to do. So hopefully we can do it within a relationship that supports our growth and our evolution, and also to acknowledge that sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. For our special needs children, it doesn't lessen our love for them. It's still, we want them to be successful no matter what they do and what they choose to do. So yes, Robert, having an honest conversation is key, right? honest conversations. That's a key. So I know we're getting close to the end of our time. Was there other things, anything else that you wanted to wrap with as we close out? Anything that we didn't get a chance to communicate?
No, not at this particular time. I just want to make sure that I thank everyone again for tuning in. I want to thank our audience in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I'm looking forward to getting back home at some point and introducing you to people and being able to to be there. And I just really hope that we're successful in our attempt to add value there and elsewhere. And appreciate everyone for being loyal and sticking with us as we continue to build this platform and add as much value as we possibly can to every person and family that we encounter. And again, the intention is just for you to feel like, okay, I'm not alone. Somebody else gets me. Somebody else gets me. That's the biggest thing about special needs, which is that whether it's someone with a diagnosis or someone who's a caregiver or parent, the desire to be heard, understood, or reminded that you're not alone is greater for us than it is for anybody else. And that's what this show is all about. So, feel free to let us know about ideas, people, and or topics that you think would add value to listeners. We're open to those things and looking for that all the time. We have a couple of things in that regard of our own that we're working on and looking forward to. So again, thanks everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, I was going to say, the last 2 weeks we've had guests scheduled and circumstances have come up, but it's given us an opportunity to spend a little time one-on-one, well, two-on, however many people are listening, and and giving us a chance to continue the conversation. Thank you all for your contributing. And it's funny because Shawn always ends the show as, I like to thank the women in my life. And when he does it, and I haven't done that, I always, again, go right back into that whole recording in my own head. So before you say it, I'm just going to say, I so love my, the mothers of my children. They are amazing, amazing women. They have added so significantly to my life and to the life of my children. And I am forever grateful to them. And the folks in my day-to-day life today, as we move forward, who have continued to support me in my own, journey here. I love you dearly, and you know who you are. And I would never be in a place to have open conversations if it weren't for you. So I'm grateful to you and to my children. And Shawn Francis, to you, my friend, my colleague, my partner in Thrive, for just being just going along in this journey. I don't know where this is all gonna lead to or where it's gonna take us, but I'm so enjoying this time with you, and to everybody who's listening to us on our podcasts and catching us on WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We love you, and thank you again for spending the time with us. You want to say something to end us? Empathy and love is on my always thing, right? I want to say hashtag empathy and love, but I'll stop talking now and let you wrap us up.
Most definitely. I'll say what I usually say, which is I want to thank the women in my life, which is my mom, Jan, and my wife, Laura, my daughters as well. I couldn't begin to attempt to be who I hope to be, nor who I am, without them. Remember that somebody out there needs to know that they're loved. They need to know that they count. They need to know that they're seen, and they need to know that they're heard. And I wanted to touch on one last thing, because I consider myself to be, I don't know if I'm still great at it, but I have ample procrastination skills. And so as a result, I have a lot of days that I end where I feel like, I didn't make the most out of this day. And you want to make sure that you don't leave the planet feeling like you've wasted life. And I'm sharing with Brian a post that I saw the other day where it talked about, you may have wasted many a day, many an hour, and many a life, but you are not a wasted soul, especially if you still have breath within your lungs and life within your body. So you're here. Let's increase our ability to be present. And again, wherever you might be watching or hearing us, we love you and thank you so very much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.